guy just gave me a book for free, Frankenstein in Baghdad.
I bought a book. It's called Frankenstein in Baghdad. And the guy was just happy I was there, so I was willing to buy it, but he gave it to me for free. I think that happened like 5 times on our trip. We're just in Iraq. He was like, dude, I really appreciate you coming to my country here. Have this for free. It's on the house.
Yeah, and they were very curious. That a lot of people would just be like, hey, where are you from? What's your name? Where are you from?
Yeah, and before we left, we were like, should we tell people we're Canadian? Just because of like U.S.'s history in Baghdad. Although was Canada involved in the Iraq War too? I like have no idea. I'm sure they sent some troops.
I believe so because they're allies of us, but yeah, I don't think.
We were like, should we say that we're from Finland? And it's like they're gonna know we're not from Finland. Like even though, I feel like they can just like tell. And then we were like, no, let's not lie. Let's tell them we're from America. And yeah, I didn't get like one bad look when I'm like, we're from America, and they're like, ugh. Fuck you guys.
Yeah. If anything, quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they thought it was cool. The one thing I kept on saying USA, and they didn't really know what that meant. So I had to say from America, and then boom. So after the markets, we had like 1 hour to lie down in our hotel room. And then it was time to head to the football match, which is in this stadium that's actually pretty new. I think they said it had been built recently. Solid football stadium. I don't know what the capacity was. It looked like it could fit like 20K.
It was a beautiful stadium, honestly.
Yes. A beautiful stadium. We arrived as the sun was going down, and it was a festive atmosphere. Tons of people were heading in. You had some people singing, eating falafel. That's what we grabbed pregame. And it was cool talking to our guide. We learned that he used to be on the under-21 Iraqi national team, but you're not paid for that. And so he had to pay for just like pretty much all the training and like make it to practice while still working a job on the side. And it became too much for him. So he quit, but he was a big football player, quite the athlete. And as we're walking in, we assume that like everybody's walking to the stadium. We're going to watch a live football match in Iraq, and that's when we find out that it's just a watch party where they play the game on the giant jumbotrons inside the stadium because fucking FIFA has deemed Iraq too unsafe to play a match.
They do this in the States for playoff games, right? If you're like the Pacers, Rockets, or whatever, and the game's in Houston, they'll do a watch party at the Pacers arena.
Yep.
So it was like that. It had that vibe. It was actually amazing because once again, it's not a culture of alcohol, yet 2 hours before the game, he's like, we got to get here to get seats. Like
people are going to be raging.
People are going to be raging. And it was your classic like European football atmosphere where people were going nuts, playing instruments, yelling,
waving flags,
doing chants an hour and a half, 2 hours before the match even starts.
Yep.
And it's not even there.
Yeah, it's not even there. The match was played in Saudi Arabia. And there was no one allowed at the match in Saudi Arabia. So it was a full stadium of people watching a match that had 0 people there live, which was a very weird setup. It was kind of hard to see the game on these screens where we were. They were too bright, but the atmosphere was unmatched. Like if we like spliced footage of the game with just you filming back at me in the crowd, you would think I was at a live game.
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely. It was just, it was great. Honestly, it was very. Actually, you said this to me afterwards. No women, pretty much a lot of young men.
Yes. The only woman we saw was a lady who walked on the pitch. She was like a famous Arabian musician.
Yes.
And she came out and gave like a speech to pump up the crowd.
And she was received relatively positively. I didn't expect anything different, but it was amazing because she kind of walked out.
Well, she was the one chick there.
Yeah.
She was getting the guys kind of randy.
Yeah, she had the Iraqi flag around her, and she was saying stuff, and people were reacting and clapping.
Yeah, the Iraqi guy sitting next to me, he like motions towards her. He's like, "Nice woman, huh?" And she did seem pretty attractive.
But it was very like you said, like that's something you would see in the States. It's pregame activities.
Yeah.
You kind of get the. It's amazing. You look across because we're kind of sitting with the locals.
Yeah.
And if you look across, you can see like these really posh you know, not lazy boys, but like almost like really nicely, what's the word I'm looking for? Upholstered seats behind this glass where like
for the
elites,
VIPs.
Yeah, the VIPs and the elites sit. So I was glad that we were hanging out with the locals.
With
but
the locals, yeah.
When the elite and the politicals, the politicians would kind of walk around from time to time. I think they did have some famous footballers in there too, so it wasn't all politics. But everybody was received. No booze. No booze. The entire night.
No booze, but they had concessions. They had people going around selling ice cream bars.
Yes.
Selling coffee.
Yes.
Selling tea. We bought a couple coffees off this kid who was probably like 10 years old.
Yeah.
Slanging coffees, and then as he was serving us the coffee, he spilt his like. It was a very cool contraption. It had a fire inside it to keep the coffee hot. So he would like fill up the outside with coffee, and then the fire inside would keep it hot. But he spilt the whole thing while trying to serve his coffee. I
Poor
felt
kid.
a little bad about that.
I did. I was glad he hung out with us after because he didn't have any more coffee.
Yeah.
It was kind of all over the seat. So then he just kind of sat down and chilled out for a little. I was like, all right, well, I'm glad we met you.
Yeah, he had already made a few bucks. Yeah. There were also streakers. Well, they weren't naked streakers, but there were tons of people running onto the pitch and just getting the crowd pumped up, and then they would eventually be escorted out by security. But yeah, I kind of like have the impression in Iraq people are like terrified of the government. They're not going to do that. No, these people, we probably saw 4 or 5 throughout the game.
If anything, like you said, they're a little too lenient. They would just kind of like scold them. They wouldn't run out and like tackle them. They would kind of wait for them to come back and be like, what are you doing out there? And then they would just kind of like push them back into the crowd and be like, sit down.
Yes, yeah. But because they like weren't really cracking down, just more people kept on doing it. But hey, I mean, there's not a game being played. Why not streak? You know, it just adds some more entertainment for people.
Very true.
And, I mean, spoiler alert, Iraq won the game.
Yeah, so it was amazing because the chants were great. They had a great chant. Do you remember what it was? It was like Iraq, Iraq, and then
yes. So I don't know what it is, but I know it sounded like the roof is on fire.
That's exactly what it was.
But it was talking about like support Iraq with our like soul, support Iraq with our blood. Like we'll do anything for Iraq. I don't know.
No, I think that was paraphrased fairly well. It was described to us in that manner. So they would constantly do this great, and it's a great word for chant. Iraq, Iraq, Iraq just sounds awesome.
When they scored, I start screaming, Iraq is back, Iraq is back, which sounds fire, but I think it's pronounced Iraq and not Iraq.
They in unison said Iraq, Iraq, Iraq.
Okay.
And so there were 2 incidents early on in the game. Iraq was all over UAE in the game. They were pressuring them. They were definitely the better team. And I think the crowd knew it. They were expected to win. And Ahmed was like, we're better. We're definitely going to win as long as we don't fuck this up. And they were pressuring them. They were in that zone. And there was 2 incidents. There was 2 like almost handballs where they were reviewing this. And it was like the reactions that we got in the stadium were just preposterous. It was like a goal had been scored. As soon as they saw the close-up of the hand, they were like, yeah!
Dude, it was so hard to see what was going on in the game. I thought like a goal had been scored.
The crowd was hype until they reviewed the play and determined it wasn't actually a penalty.
No penalty.
I shit you not, but that exact same sequence of events happened again 10 minutes later.
No penalty.
It was quite a roller coaster of emotions.
But then very quickly, Iraq finally scored with an electric goal. was just an awesome reaction. It was pretty
And
much.
you were filming then too.
Oh
right?
yeah, it was pretty
nice.
much what we came for, and it was just a big blew the top off the stadium.
Dude, a fun fact, I've been to 3 sporting events, or I guess 5 if you count the bullfighting and the camel wrestling, but every team I have supported in Turkey and Iraq has one.
Yeah.
So a Galatasaray football match in Turkey, an FS basketball match, which we'll talk about later, and then this Iraq football game. They've all won. So, yeah, I guess it's worked out perfectly for content purposes.
They said that. Remember the guys around us were like, you're good luck.
You Americans are good luck.
Pretty good luck.
We should talk about how the football match was like the one time on this trip where me and you have just felt like straight up celebrities.
Yes.
Like I think like
taking pictures.
maybe there were some other foreigners there, like on the VIP side, but I think we were like the only kind of foreign tourists just like sitting in those stands, as far as I could see. And everybody would just come up like Instagram, YouTube. What's your YouTube? What's your Instagram? We were getting mobbed, but it was great. I didn't mind it. Like the people were very friendly. Now I have all these like followers. Like I probably gained like 1,000 YouTube subscribers, and they were like, when are the vids dropping? When are the vids dropping? So we might actually put our Iraq vids out before the Turkey ones now, just because everybody in Iraq is waiting for them.
Yeah, and you're right. That was some serious peer-to-peer marketing because people were. That's what I mean. That was like the night where that really changes your perception and the reality of what that country is, because it was so. It's like this is what we have in common. Like it's like you guys love sports. You're supporting your team. You're really into Instagram and YouTube, and you're asking us about it. And it's like that's kind of when I put out the tweet later that said like we went to Iraq. It was amazing. And I, of course, obviously because of the history, it's different for our veterans. And we obviously have veterans at Barstool Sports. And I'm glad they reached out to us, and we've talked to them a little bit because it was different for them, very different experience.
Yeah.
But when you go to a soccer game like that and you see what it's like, it's just amazing.
Yeah. But I think Captain Cons and Uncle Chaps will enjoy seeing these vids, because with what happened in Afghanistan, the people who fought there, it's got to be the worst feeling when you just see the Taliban come back to power. It's like, why were we even there in the first place? Being able to see like life returning to some sense of normalcy in Iraq, hopefully will make them feel good.
Yeah, and that's, when Ahmed was saying that, he was like, it kind of coincides with the theme of what I'm saying, where it's a very hopeful time for Iraq because they were about to host a fucking FIFA qualifier.
Was that going to be the first time?
I don't know, but it was historic because yes, they have not been able to do this, and I don't think they've been in a position.
Fucking Iran had to fire that rocket.
Yeah, so they're really jonesing for those types of opportunities on the world stage to be like, this is a real place. Like this isn't what it used to be. So
I'm definitely going to tag FIFA in like every post about the game and be like, #let them play.
Yeah. So we're gonna, and it looks like they're chasing that spot. They don't have it secured. I think they
need to beat Syria, and then they might need to beat Australia. I mean,
they actually play today, March 29th. Group stage finishes on March 29th as the UAE hosts South Korea, and Iraq takes on Syria and Dubai. So they're in Dubai tonight.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's probably gonna be fans at that match, I would hope.
In Dubai, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean if the Iraqis travel? Yeah.
No, I don't know. I don't think Iraq. Actually, I think Iraqis are allowed to go to Dubai. That might be one of the countries. But I was just shocked that the game against UAE was in Saudi Arabia and they didn't allow any fans at the match. Maybe they don't do that because they want to make it as fair as possible. If it can't be in like your home, I don't know. But if it can't be like a home game, all I know is that Iraq hasn't made the World Cup since maybe the 70s or
1986, I think it said, was with their inception. But anyway, here's what it says. It says Iraq has hosted just 2 World Cup qualifiers since 2003 against Jordan in Erbil, which was 2011, and Hong Kong, which you talked about, in the southern city of Basra in 2019.
So Baghdad has not hosted.
Right, exactly. So that would have been pretty incredible.
Yes. I think I was talking about China. I feel like did China lose to Iraq? No, China lost to Syria, which I think is even a worse look because Syria is still like in the midst of a war.
Yeah. And
China lost to them, and China has invested like $1 billion trying to improve football in their country. It's not really working out for them. So after the game too, this was the one time where it's like, obviously my head is always on a swivel while I'm there. And we were walking out, and all of a sudden I just hear like shots, like explosions. And I just like, holy shit, what's going on? Look up. People are setting off fireworks to celebrate the dub. It was beautiful. I think even some people started lighting like flares, like they do like they did at the Belgrade Derby. But that was behind us, and even all the security forces there were friendly. Like we're walking by, they're all like, "Hey, how are you?" We're like, "Go Iraq." They were all pumped, happy to see us. So yeah, I didn't even feel like nervous around these security forces with giant guns. Like they seemed just as happy to see us as all of the everyday Iraqi people.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I meant. I kind of figured that as much. But it is funny when you're walking around, and whether it's in the airport with the more official looking, like, uniforms that aren't like for streetwear, where they're the kind of like, I guess you call them officers, right?
Yeah.
And then you have like the guys wearing riot gear. It's still kind of tough to tell. Like you can kind of spot the ones that are official.
You definitely don't want to walk up to any of them and put a camera in their face.
No.
Definitely not that.
And they had definitely built like a perimeter well outside of the stadium where we kind of like cabbed up and then had to walk.
Yeah.
But they were nice. Remember those guys that checked us out? And then they were, because I had the camera right in my hand, and they were pretty chill.
When we were walking into the game, they told John they have a policy, no cameras. Yeah. Which they did that in Turkey too. It's absurd because every phone is a fucking camera. Like these iPhones are just as
I had a GoPro.
good quality.
I had a GoPro.
Yeah, you had a GoPro. They say no camera, and then our tour guide walked up to the dude and he was like, "Can you call your manager? Because I'm just here with 2 YouTubers from the U.S. They want to show people that Iraq is actually safe and it's like a cool country to visit. And I think this video would help." And so he was like, "Yeah, sure." He called the manager. Manager said it's fine, and we could film the rest of the time.
They kind of looked it over, and we're like, "Oh, okay." But I like that there was like an appeal.
Yeah,
there was like an appeal.
There's
that,
an
like,
appeal.
Hey, remember this is a new dawn in Iraq, and they were like, "You're right."
Yeah, it's not every day you have foreign sports journalists like flying to Baghdad to cover an event.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like this was all one day.
Yeah.
That was all one because we arrived at like 1:30 in the morning. And we got back to our hotel
24
around,
hours later.
Yeah, around like after midnight. So that was just nonstop action-packed day. And the next day, we headed out of Baghdad, headed down south. Our end destination were the Marshes of Mesopotamia, which we'll talk about. But first, we made a pit stop in Babylon. Sure, everyone has heard of Babylon. I bet you most people you ask, if you say, which modern day country was Babylon in, a lot of people wouldn't know.
No.
I learned about it when the Iraq War started, because I remember there was an article about like trying to protect all the historical monuments in the country during the war. So that's how I found out that like the ancient city of Babylon, one of the oldest and most famous ancient cities on the planet, is actually just 1 hour outside of Baghdad.
Yeah. It was worth it too.
It was 100% worth it. I mean, one of the main reasons we wanted to go is because Saddam Hussein has this abandoned palace right outside of it. He wanted to like build the new Babylon. He took a lot of pride in the fact that Babylon is in Iraq. So he built like a very ancient, architecturally inspired palace, like overlooking the ancient city. And I think he like built back up a lot of the ancient city too.
Yeah, and Babylon has the amazing blue gold arch, right?
Yes.
Is what you would call it, with like horses, I believe, on it.
And like giraffes.
Yes,
Yeah.
and like giraffes, and pretty intricate. I think it's a recreation, obviously,
Yeah.
but still very cool. And definitely the one time where we wish we had could have brought the drone, because there's like this big maze that was built as like a defense system, right?
I don't know why the maze was there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I would.
I think
we'll
he
look
had
into
said
that and drop it
something to that
in the
effect.
VO. Okay.
Of it was like a defense mechanism to like confuse. I don't know. But before, when we drove up, this was the first time where we got to kind of experience the very famous Iraqi checkpoints.
Yes.
We drive up, and to do this without a guide, to drive around Iraq or any really part of Baghdad without, you can't do it without your passport. You got to have your passport. And B, to do it without a guide would almost be impossible, because they know like a little English, but you meet a lot of guys, especially the police, that don't. So we have our guides that tell them, and they kind of at first will just talk with them. And there's a few checkpoints where you just get waved through. And then there's a few checkpoints where they look at your passport, but they kind of barely look at it. They're just kind of like, okay, yep.
Yeah.
And then there's other times where they ask a few questions and they're kind of like, well, what are you doing here? Who are you?
Yes. And like our guide was good at getting us past most checkpoints within a few minutes.
Yeah.
The longest one, like they made us get out of the car and they're just like, they kind of want to just like assert that they're in charge. Like we're the ones letting you in here. And so they just like stare at it. And do you want to tell the story?
Well, I think this was it was funny too, because we went through one and then we got another, like literally no joke, 15 feet away.
Yeah.
Like there was like two guys that looked at our passports. We drive 15 feet forward and these guys are like, whoa, 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 whoa. Passports.
Yeah.
Our guy's just like,
and then he's like, passports, where'd you guys come from? We're like, there is only one road here. Like, you literally saw where we came from.
It's just right
there's
there.
no other way to get up here.
But this guy, he starts looking at my passport and he goes, what's your name? And I was like, John. And he was like, Kelly? And I said, John Kelly. And he goes, Kelly John.
Well, he's like, why does it say Kelly John in the passport?
It says Kelly John right here. And I said, last name, John Kelly.
Yeah,
And he goes, surname Kelly? I said, surname Kelly. And he kind of like, oh, okay.
It's like, dude, your job is to look at passports. You haven't noticed that they put the surname first?
It's like, I think he was trying to get me. He was
he was
like,
like, oh, are you trying to pull a fast one?
It says Kelly John right here.
You don't even know your own name. And then I think he wanted to just like ask a question to make sure like he was being official.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what I mean by if you didn't have a guide and somebody did that, it would be very difficult to talk your way out of that and be like, no. It says John Kelly. Like, this
I mean,
is my
he
name.
should come to that. He should know how to read a fucking passport.
But I was worried about, like, I had heard not horror stories, but like, some people without a guide who maybe got stopped for like an hour.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is already like a 6-hour drive, by the way.
Yes.
6-hour drive down to the Marshes where we're heading. So I was like, if we get stopped for like an hour, that's really going to fuck us up.
I know.
But
we only had 4 days in the country, so we had to make every hour count.
But we didn't experience anything like that.
No.
The most we had was maybe, all totaled, maybe an added
Yes.
20 to 30 minutes over the whole course of the thing in checkpoints.
But shortly afterwards, I did have another run-in with Iraqi police.
The palace was cool.
Yes, we got to just like walk around Saddam's old palace.
Tons
Beautiful
of graffiti.
estate.
Tons of graffiti.
Tons of graffiti. The U.S. Army used it as a headquarters during the war. And then after they left, just local people looted the whole thing. So there's no furniture left. There's no like rugs left.
There's some chandeliers, but
yeah.
that's kind of
Chandeliers.
There's a lot of junk left over. They kind of left some of the rubble and like barbed wire remnants and like wood.
They put all the junk and barbed wire on all the stairs leading up because it's a 4-floor palace with like there's a beautiful pool in the back. That was my favorite part. But I started seeing all these Iraqi tourists just climbing over the junk and making it to the second and third floor.
Well, do you remember when we first looked at it, we were alone, and we both looked at each other like, well, this is clearly here to prevent you from walking up the stairs. So we were like, all right, we'll check out the rest of this and double back. As soon as we separated, these like a field trip of kids just ran past me and just like jumped over the stuff.
Yes.
And just ran up the stairs. And I was like, maybe you can go up there.
Yeah, I saw those kids, and I'm like, when in Iraq, do as the Iraqis do. So I climbed over the barbed wire and shit. And as soon as I got up, I think a lot of those kids got caught, and I just pretended not to hear them get caught, and I kept on going up. I made it onto the roof, and I was like, this is sick. As soon as I get to the roof, my tour guide sends me a text. He's like, there's an officer down here. He's very upset. You need to come down right now. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'll come down. And then I see there's actually a police officer comes up to the roof and just like sees me squatting on the roof of the palace. And I was a little worried. I didn't think I would get like arrested. I just thought he might like take my camera. But no, he just escorted me down. I had to actually go down like a more dangerous way than I came up. I had to,
I got a shot of you coming down the stairs in this whole thing. And you're right, the other police officer who was down there saw you walking down there, and he gave a yell. He was like, he kind of yelled at you. Like, I don't know what he said, but he said something to the effect of like, forbidden.
Yeah, so no, I apologized, and then we left. And he didn't try to take my camera. Yeah. So that will be cool footage to see. Walked around Babylon for a little bit, and then, well, Babylon, I'm sure you guys know the two things it's most famous for was the Tower of Babel from the Bible was apparently there, and also the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the ancient wonders of the world. We didn't really get to see the remnants of it. I don't know if they have a place where they think they were or not.
Some of it's like recreated and rebuilt, which is nice for context because otherwise it would kind of just be staring at rocks. So it was important for them to do that, and that is what kind of creates some of like the uber touristy feel.
And they rebuilt some walls though, where you can see the bottom of the wall is all the original bricks, and the top was actually rebuilt by Saddam Hussein, I think, because he took so much pride in it.
Yes, and they said that he actually wrote his name like
on all the bricks.
Saddam Hussein did this. Like I was the one that fixed this. Make sure you remember that.
Yeah,
that's basically what it said.
So then we got back on the road. After a 4-hour drive, we got to the whole region of Iraq known as the Marshes of Mesopotamia.
We're about to board. After a very long supply run, we are ready to head to this guy's house, I think. He has a house in the middle of the marsh.
There we go, Donnie.
Yep, we are off.
I gotta read even more about this, but there's a group of people down there known as the Marsh Arabs, and they've been living in these houses in the middle of the marshes for probably 1,000 years, if not more. I think they originally went there to just hide from invaders, or so the local government wouldn't bother them and they could just do their own thing. And I know when Saddam came to power, he was upset that there were these Arabs living in the marshes who wouldn't listen to him, they wouldn't bow down to him, and they were revolting against his rule. So he straight up just drained most of the marshes.
I think this was, even to contextualize it more, right? This was 1980 to 88, which was the Iran-Iraq war.
Yeah.
So that had some context to it, but you're right. I actually meant to ask him at how he did that. I don't know what the source is, but he somehow drains a lot of the swamp.
Yeah.
And it's dry.
He just
never came back.
They wouldn't bend the knee, and he just kind of
right. But I don't know what feeds it, so I don't know if he just dammed it up like a beaver.
Oh, he probably just redirected, because I think it's probably the Euphrates or Tigris which feeds it, and he probably built some dams.
Right, exactly. So it never came back as strong as it was. So it's.
But after Saddam Hussein, they have been doing a lot of efforts trying to rebuild the marshes. I think it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site now, or
sure,
and it's definitely something that the Iraq government is trying to turn into a tourist attraction. So they are a lot of tour groups that will bring local Iraqis for a day or two on the marshes, because it's a beautiful area, and you can go for. I mean, we'll tell you what we did, but I think a lot of Iraqis come down there for the day, and you go on boat cruises, you have lunch on these small little islands that are scattered throughout. You can go bird hunting.
Yeah, and this is a much smaller, I would call it a village. It's not even really a town. It's a bigger village.
Yes.
That has, convenient. We picked up chicken wings at a convenience market next to that was actually one of my smaller favorite parts of the trip, was there was a bike shop next to them, and we were waiting to pick up supplies, and the kids were just awesome.
Yes.
So I got some great footage of that, and just the locals were super friendly, because this is, like you said, an area where tourists are definitely coming, so they're getting used to it. But
and that place, I think it was called Chibayasha or something, and that's the launching point for anyone who wants to explore the marshes.
Yeah, so this is on the mainland side, if you will.
Yeah.
Where they had this big, massive, and we'll talk about the huts that are built from thatch, handmade.
Reeds.
But there was, you're right. There was this town center that we first pulled up to.
A town hall, yeah.
Yeah, where the community leaders and the men who are, I think really you could be anybody. You don't have to, they don't have
as long as you're a man, I think.
Yes, as long as you're a man, but they kind of come and hang out. They just kind of love drinking coffee, drinking tea, drinking chai tea,
Yep.
sit around. It's a big, beautiful. I think
Shoot
he
the
said
shit.
it cost a lot of money to build.
Yeah, he was saying any Iraqi dinar, but it was
Yes.
like 20 million Iraqi dinar or
Yes,
something.
it was a lot of money for them to build, and it looked like it. It was beautiful.
Yes, it
It was
was.
the most amazing handmade thing
Yeah.
you will ever see.
Yeah,
and, it was,
and all made from just reed and string.
yeah, we got pictures of it. We'll post. But obviously, if you listen to this, there's probably a little bit more context than you'll even get from the video, just because it was like it looked like a place of worship.
Yep.
But really, they just kind of sit around and shoot the shit. And if issues arise in the town, they can compromise them here. But it seemed like that day that we were
If
there.
like a famous imam comes by, they'll have him come through, and they had a seat of honor for him on one side.
Yeah, and I think it was like you're kind of expected to like show face here. Like I think Ahmed was like, we kind of have to like go over and like chill out for a little, and like we should go in, take our shoes off, sit
Yeah.
around, talk with the folks, kiss babies, say hello, and,
Yeah.
and then it's just polite, I think, to do.
Yeah, and drink some tea. Like, I think while I was in Iraq, I was drinking like 7 cups of tea a day, 2 cups of coffee.
All the time.
And it's crazy because they don't drink booze, but they have to be just like wired. They're
Wired.
just fucking
Yeah.
just consuming that much caffeine all day.
He was saying too, you kind of like they have a guy who's like the preparer of all this, who kind of is basically like the dude who takes care of like serving everybody. And what you're supposed to do is like grab it. He'll like pour you a quick cup, real small. You're supposed to grab it with your right hand. You kind of sip it, finish it, and if you're done, you kind of like shake it like twice and put it back, and that means you're done.
Yes.
And I guess if you don't, then you can like get more and more. So
Yeah.
it was like a cool system.
Yeah, it was. And one of the coolest things that Bilweekend does, the tour company that we went with, is they made a connection with one of the families that still live in these reed huts where people have been living for thousands of years. And so they arranged for us to take a boat into the middle of the marshes and stay with this family for like a full day,
Yeah.
a full night and day.
Yeah, and he said that they have been working on these relationships. Because I think you asked him, you were like, how did you like make this relationship? He was like, well, they're starting to get it. And he was like, this guy in particular really seems to get it. He was like, he's a little expensive, but I was like, honestly, this should be expensive. This is
Yeah,
so,
it was one of the cooler experiences of my
like,
life.
Let's pay him whatever he wants.
Yeah.
He's basically inviting you into his home. They have these, you'll talk about this a little bit more. The boats are cool. They have like power boats,
Yeah.
but they're like canoe shaped, very thin, and you kind of sit down and ever evenly distribute the weight. You could pack a lot of gear in there, and you're very low into the water.
Yeah.
You can touch the water with your hands.
Yeah, it was honestly pretty comfortable. And those things cook, and you're just like cruising through this crazy maze of channels.
This
But
guy
yeah.
knows them by heart.
Yeah, this guy knows him by
He
heart.
could do
He
it
was
in
the man.
pitch dark.
Yeah, yeah. We headed towards the Reed house just as the sun was going down, and obviously this guy is paid to allow us to stay at his place. I just know some of the other families that live in the huts. They're kind of like worried about foreigners coming and judging like how they live, and they're like, we don't want these tourists to come and because they're gonna like make fun of how we live and stuff. But this guy understands that no, we just want to learn about how you live, and it's a very eye-opening experience because it's completely different to anything we've known growing up in the U.S.
Oh, yeah. He said that
yeah.
prior to us, he had just hosted a group of like 11 people.
Yeah.
And when we showed up, it was very cool pulling up. Like
Pulling up, yeah.
Pulling up was an amazing experience.
Like all of his grandchildren or his friends' grandchildren were there to greet us. So and the kids were pumped to see us.
and they were beautiful. Like the
Yes,
kids,
the kids were.
the little boys and little girls were just like beautiful people.
Yeah,
And they were like really cool
yeah,
and very curious and just like super friendly and just like looking at us and very inviting. Like, oh, get off the boat. And they grabbed our stuff.
and they knew we had just been to the supermarket, so we had candy.
yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
But yeah, so we show up just as it's becoming like too dark to see. But luckily, we go right into one of the Reed houses, and they have a fire and a little like makeshift lamp, and we kind of just sit down and start drinking more tea, cranking hoons. Obviously, the family can't really speak a word of English.
No, nothing.
So we kind of just had to use like hand communication, and they understood the words like "thank you" and
Yeah.
"very good." And our guide would help us translate. But even our guide goes, he's like, I can't really understand these people. They speak like a completely different dialect of Arabic.
It also seemed like our host was a talkative, entertaining dude because he was just talking a lot. And it is an interesting experience to be around that environment and not understand anything that they're talking about. Luckily, it's like also very easy to be low maintenance. Like we were just kind of like put our stuff in there, sat down around an amazing fire, and just kind of like took it all in.
هسه صار عندي وهو هسه خرب ماي الماي خرب وعندي خير كثير والله عندي نعمة حلال نعمة كبيرة عندي ومنطلع على غادي أخاف عليه وماينا خرب ونتوجه فجعة الله يفزعني يفتح يجيب لنا باب مال الماي.
And it was good that they had all the kids because I feel like you can always communicate with kids.
Yes,
at least. Yeah.
It was easier to like look at them and understand that they were curious and like loving this. This was like a big night.
Yeah.
And it was a big night for us. So like that was like a very easy thing to just communicate and be like, this is cool. I had for some reason I thought that scarves would be like a big thing because I thought if you go into a mosque you're supposed to take off your shoes, and that's in Turkey as well. So I thought you were supposed to cover your shoulders. So I had gotten like this traditional like scarf that I had been wearing in Iraq, and the kid. He was one of the older kids, actually. I think he was probably 12, 14, maybe 12. And he saw it and kind of put it around his head. He like asked for it, so I took it off and he put it around his head. And he was loving it. He was just like, it was kind of funny to me because like this was actually the one area where our host was wearing a scarf.
Yeah.
Ahmed, our guide, wound up putting on his scarf, which was very cool looking. And then I believe you're right, it was our host's uncle or like,
that was just his friend,
his buddy who
he let his friend move into one of his houses.
So they had like 4 complex huts on this island, if you will.
Yes.
And I think he even told the funny story of like the guy has 2 wives, and he built one for his first wife that was older, right? And then when he married his second wife, he built his second wife a brand new one.
Yeah,
and
his
his old
like, I'm
wife,
not going to share a fucking reed hut with your first wife.
And then and so he was like, okay. And then his first wife was like, well, that's a brand new fucking hut. Where's my brand new fucking hut?
Yeah.
And so then he had to build another one.
I didn't envy him.
Yeah.
I think
the perils of having
two wives would be a pain in the ass.
The perils of having 2 wives in one story.
Yeah. But I think most of the people in the marshes, they work as fishermen, or they also raise water buffaloes and ducks. So this guy, I don't think he had any water buffaloes, but that's how people make their living. And it was cool because as you're cruising through these channels, you'll see just water buffaloes swimming across.
That was actually, I wish we had gotten even closer to them, but they were awesome.
Yeah, they were all over the place. I think they were all probably owned by someone, but who knows? Like, I know when you're in Africa, you just see like wild water buffalo. I don't know if some of them are wild, but some people definitely, their job was just, being like a shepherd for a group of water buffalo, which, can you make like water buffalo cheese or sell milk, or were they kind of just...
Yeah, I think they're pretty versatile.
Yeah.
I think you can use meat too as well.
Yeah, no, I think once they get to a certain size, they probably harvest the meat. And yeah, they wake up early in the morning and go out and fish, and that's how they make their living. I mean, I loved the setup he had. Like, it was so beautiful.
Yeah, and it was honestly, to say he woke up early is an understatement. I think he sleeps like 4 hours a night because he was up before the crack of dawn. It must have been 4:30 or 5, and I'm getting a little ahead. I know you want to go back, but I think because they pray. He prays early. So, but we'll set some of this up because the night was wonderful. We cooked chicken.
Yep, we cooked chicken wings on the fire. So they always have a small fire inside their huts, but when you need a large enough fire to actually cook meat, they do that outside because these reed huts don't have a chimney. But if you have a small fire, it's not a problem. Like, any smoke can just
you leave the
flow
front
out the
door.
window. Yeah,
the front door is open.
And the
It was
hut,
super warm in there too.
very warm. The hut was kind of like a smaller version of the giant reed mansion that we saw in town.
Yes, handmade.
All handmade. Like, and it's all from reeds. Like, I think the string is kind of made from the reeds. They have like giant pieces of reeds which add the structure, and then they just make these bushels of smaller reeds which provide the walls.
And they put like plastic in between,
Yeah.
think, for water resistance, so
To
that
make it waterproof.
so that it will at least run off.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd really want to be in there in a big storm, but
Yes. And then I know our guide actually brought some Jameson. So like after dinner, we were going to sit by the fire, swig some whiskey. But then,
it would have been more respectful to not do it in front of our host.
yeah, so we didn't know our host was going to be there, but our host ended up hanging out with us all night. And like, it's definitely not something you would want to do, to be like drinking alcohol in front of them, especially when you're not in your own hotel room. You're a guest at someone's house. So we just hung out. They drank coffee and tea up until they go to bed,
Yeah.
which is wild. They've been doing that. They did that in Iraq the whole time.
I regretted that too. I had another chai tea right around the fire late, and I was like, damn, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, so
But it's
that's
hard to say no when they're like,
It is hard to say no. And the tea, I think the tea is pretty light. It's the
Yes.
Iraq coffee, which will have you up all night. So then we went to bed and we all slept in the same hut. I slept right next to our host, to the patriarch of the family. I think he was like cranking cigs as he was going to bed.
Oh, yeah.
I definitely smelled a lot of hoon smoke. And then you sat right next to our driver, or you slept right next to
who's
the
a
guy.
great dude, like a really nice guy also who had contracted for the day to drive us. And yeah, we didn't even mention it. There is a highway down all the way, 5 hours that we drove.
Yeah.
There's a real paved highway all the way.
Yeah.
It doesn't have lines, so I was glad we had a driver because it was a little crazy.
Yeah.
And like you just kind of fly past trucks. It was definitely a passing lane, but so it was nice to have this guy who did all of the driving both there and back. But I was sleeping next to him, and I was pretty comfortable. We had big blankets.
Yeah, and the floor is like
Yeah.
lined with a bunch of reeds too, so it's a very soft floor.
It is. It's kind of a little cushiony, and it was like, the geese outside were like, you could hear them, but it wasn't like they were going crazy. You were a little worried about the bugs. That you were like, I wonder if that's going to really crank up at night, and if we're going to hear some crazy bugs.
Oh yeah.
Some crazy insects. But honestly, that was relatively fine as well. The only thing I didn't count on was some serious snoring coming from
By our driver.
our driver directly next to me.
So I passed out, I think, within the first like half hour of lying down.
Yeah.
And I think after I fell asleep is when the snoring really cranked up.
Yeah, and once you get that in your head, like I can usually fall asleep, and if I'm comfortable, and I can even kind of just figure it out. But once it gets in your head that you're annoyed, it comes even harder. You just get annoyed, and then you're just standing there, and then you're like, I still haven't fallen asleep. Now I'm really annoyed.
I'm telling you should have just went out and slept in one of the boats.
Well, we had stacked each other up, and I kind of, when I first got in there, I thought we were gonna like pick corners maybe. I wish we had done that, because that probably would have been easier for me to like roll over and be like against the wall. But we had kind of like stacked it up, and I was just like, man, it's pitch dark. If I like get up and wake people up, it's because I was like, I should like flip. I was almost like, should I flip reverse and just go like head to feet?
Oh yeah, that
And
probably
just
would have worked.
get
You would've
away-
been further away from him.
Yeah, and like get away. But I just kind of dealt with it.
I think you were helping block the noise because I was on the other side of you.
But if that's the biggest thing that happened, it's really not that bad.
Yeah. So you slept like an hour?
I had caught up honestly before that. I had slept on the way down, so it really wasn't that bad. I woke up in the morning and you're a little bit like, oh no, like I got to do a whole day. But once again, the coffee and tea is there and ready, and you get some in your system, and then you're ready to fucking go.
Yeah, I slept like a baby, and I remember I woke up and I was like, John, how'd you sleep?
Wait, no,
Horrible.
you have to say how you woke up.
Oh yeah, so I woke up with the host staring at me. He was like squatting directly next to my head. I turned around, I'm like, whoa. And he just wanted me to charge his phone because I have my computer with me. But it was literally like, open my eye, dude is squatting like 6 inches from my face, handing out his phone, asking for a charger, which was fine. I got his phone charged up. But yeah.
I think 2 hours prior to that, or maybe an hour and a half, he had woken me up praying. He had put his mat down right next to you.
Yeah.
Because you were on the side of me, and he kind of woke up right next to you and was not quiet about it. and just kind of did his prayer the way he had to. And I think he woke you up, and then we like re-fell back asleep.
Yes. Yeah. So honestly, that was like the most solid sleep I got the whole time we were in Baghdad. And then so I wake up with that guy on my face, and the moment I walk out of the hut, all the kids are playing frisbee, which is the last thing I expected to see. I feel like when I think of just like American sports, like Americana, I think of playing frisbee because it's such like a American college sport or like an American stoner sport.
Oh yeah.
But we went out and they were just using the tops of these containers as frisbees. And that was actually a lot of fun. So, after a couple cups of tea and tossing around the Mellow Biscuit, I was ready to start the day.
Yeah, not real frisbees, right? They were like tops of plastic containers.
Yeah,
right.
But
Circular.
those kids knew what they were doing. I wonder if that's because I wonder if just frisbees, like people have been passing those back and forth ever since like flat circular objects existed. Because I feel it's almost like a human impulse just to toss it.
I wish we had known because we could have bought them a real frisbee as a gift.
Yes, we didn't even know there were going to be kids at the house.
No, I had no idea. Yeah, they were absolutely adorable though. We took great pictures. We'll post them. They will obviously be in the videos too.
So we saw the female kids, but all of the older female women, they have their own hut. We were told not to film them. And they kind of just stayed in their hut almost the whole time. I saw one of them walk by and I said, Salam alaikum. But yeah, we didn't interact with the woman of the family at all. So then we had another Iraqi bagel with cream cheese and hopped back in the boats to go for kind of just like a tour of the marshes and to do a little fish fry.
We had mentioned Saddam Hussein had drained these marshes. They're pretty polluted. And the guy that we were staying in his hut, he only drank milk and bread. Is that correct?
Yes.
He only drank milk and ate bread. That was his diet.
Yeah, we told him we brought chicken wings. And he goes,
nah.
He only eats milk and bread. And I was like, oh, is he a vegetarian?
Right.
And they were like, no, he just only eats milk and bread.
Yeah, and I didn't even know you could survive off of just that, but I guess that makes a lot of sense.
I think as you get older, that guy was pretty old. Your body doesn't need as much.
Sure, I agree.
Yeah.
And but I think it is also related to the fact that they can't drink this water. This is not drinking water. This is
no, and I think it's like it's slowly getting worse.
Yes.
But the marshes are huge. It's just like the area where we are. That's probably where the most people live.
Yep.
So it has hence gotten the most polluted. But he said he would give us a tour to some of the cleaner areas of the marshes because I wanted to go hippo mode.
Yeah.
Before we talk about that, though, his friend in the hut, I noticed everybody was just cranking hoons inside. So I was like, oh, I guess I can vape. And so I was vaping, and then he motioned like no and was asking our guide what it was. I think he maybe thought it was like weed or something.
Yeah. I think the contraption threw him off.
It threw him off, and I don't blame him. Like he kind of was just like, smoke a cigarette, but I don't want to see you vaping because he's probably like, kids these fucking days with their vapes. Why can't you crank a hoon like me? So yeah, the rest of the time I would only smoke cigarettes in there. But yeah, we headed out on a beautiful boat cruise. And he finally found a spot where he was like, if you want to swim, go swimming. So I jumped in a lot colder than I expected, and not very deep, because there's a good, probably 5 feet of just pluff mud, which is mud you will just sink right through.
Sediment.
Only probably 2 to 4 feet of the actual water where I could swim. But yeah, I guess I got to go hippo mode with some water buffalo, which also go hippo mode because when they swim, only their nose and top of their head are out of the water. And very refreshing. He did tell me make sure not to swallow it, but I felt like $1 million after that. It really woke me up.
Yeah, and he said, because you were actually trying to swim towards the water buffalo that we saw. They were only probably, 100 yards away, 70 yards away at one point? I think you got as close as 50 yards away.
Yeah.
And some other guy kind of didn't want you to get that close, I think, because he snapped the water, right, with his cane, and then they kind of took off.
So yeah, I hear some water buffalo are friendly, some aren't. And the guy, our host, apparently he can tell just from one look. He knows the friendly water buffalo. He knows the unfriendly. Maybe those are the ones that are actually owned by people, and the ones that aren't friendly are the ones that are just wild in the marshes.
Yeah. And I don't know what it would do if you kind of went up. I don't know if you just like pet a water buffalo.
Well, you see the videos online of water buffaloes in Africa like fucking up a lion,
Right.
fucking up a crocodile.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would probably charge and buck me to the moon. But yeah.
But they did mention along those same lines too that a lot of the water buffalo are dying because it just doesn't rain a lot there. So I don't think that this water gets to exchange a lot. It kind of sits.
Yeah.
It kind of sits, and the trash situation is concerning.
Yeah, near their like that village, which was the launching point for the marshes, there's just a lot of trash in the water.
Yeah, and we were like, okay, let's eat some lunch. We were like, we haven't had really fish really like the whole trip, right? I don't think we had like any fish. So
No, we hadn't.
We had maybe gone to a seafood place in Turkey, but and I'm a big seafood guy. I know you love it, so we were like, let's do that. We pull up to like this fish exchange market on the
this
water.
was in the middle of the marshes.
Yeah, in the middle of the marshes, like a small like boat, junction, if you will.
Yeah.
And these guys, I guess, were buying and selling. But that was a little concerning because there was like dead fish around me.
So that was an illegal fish market because they have a fish season where everyone's allowed to sell their fish. These guys were like hiding in the middle of the marshes selling fish that like wasn't even caught legally.
Right. And right around like the water was like
Yeah, there were a bunch of
dead fish.
that looked like too small too. It's like
Yeah.
let these guys grow a little bit
Right.
before you fish them. I mean, they have the rules in place so they can keep healthy fish populations.
Yeah.
But they weren't like weirded out with us filming them or anything.
Nope.
It was cool. It was just a bunch of people smoking cigarettes, packing the fish on ice, and just probably shooting the shit and gossiping as well.
So we wound up buying the fish from a market.
We bought fish from the market in town. We didn't support their illegal activities, but so we went and just found a random island in the marshes, pulled up, and did a fish fry. And this was my favorite meal of the trip. They had this sauce that's it looked like balsamic vinegar. I don't know what it was, but it was kind of like a dark sauce like that with pickles in it. And they had those contraptions you may have seen where you first fillet the fish, you get it completely flat, you put it in between these two grills. We started a fire. This dude, our host, could start a fire in like
Seconds.
in seconds.
Seconds.
And then you just like have the fish roasting on one side, and then you flip it, and the other side gets roasted. And then right before it's ready, you put on all the sauce, put it back up against the fire so the sauce gets kind of cooked into the fish. And then they broke out the bread towels.
Yeah. Oh, and he also salted it. A good amount, but not too much, not too little. Like it was the perfect amount of salt. And he had all these techniques because the night before when we had done the chicken, we had actually used the same device.
Yeah.
And it was a little tougher because you do some direct flame, but then you got to cook chicken through. So you have to like put it on the side, and chicken's a little heavier.
Yeah.
So we were struggling a little bit with that. And the fish, he had like all these techniques where he would like, there's like two little pincers on like that thing that holds the fish, so you can stab it into the ground and like sit it next to the fire.
Yeah.
So it's not a direct flame, but it gives that nice crisp skin, like really blackens it.
Yeah.
And you get that done, and then he just flipped it, and then you can just see the red fish turn to that perfect white, like meaty, so much meat. I was shocked at how much meat was on this fish.
And they break out the bread towels, and you just kind of use the towel to grab a chunk of meat off the fish.
You're making like fish tacos.
Yeah, fish tacos, exactly.
Yeah.
With some pickles. They also had like pieces of onion you could throw in there.
Yep.
And you obviously got to look out for small bones, but that was the tastiest meal. And I was worried at first when he was like, yeah, some parts of the marshes are getting polluted, but the fish tasted completely fresh. We didn't get sick. I may have gotten a little sick from the chicken that wasn't completely cooked through because my stomach was cramping up the next day, but I felt fine after the fish.
Oh yeah, no, it was delicious. And you're right. The biggest concern with like cooking a fish like that is you don't really get to debone it. But honestly, like they knew how to do it. You just kind of take the spine out, which gets a large portion of these little bones out, and then you can just pick out the little ones.
Yeah.
And then you have like this really plump, fresh succulent fish meat that you can just kind of drop into your taco and eat. And it was really good, really good.
I wish I could have had more, but a boat pulled up with like tourists from Iraq, I think. I don't know if they pulled up to our island because they saw us there.
I think it was a good spot. I think it's like a known spot within a spot because it was like a good spot. It's nice and flat, so it was like a good spot to start a fire, and then you can circle up on like a blanket and kind of hang out. And you're right, like all these people came up and were like, oh, we were gonna grab that spot.
And then we're like, well, join us.
Yeah.
So 2 boats, probably like 15 people. And they were having a blast. So this was Friday. This was Saturday in Iraq. It's like, I think Friday's the biggest holiday of the week. So they were very festive and like, they were like, hey, can we perform for you? And they started to do like a singing and dancing performance with me in the middle. It starts off with singing and then like the energy slowly builds and it ends with everyone just running around in a circle. So I got wrapped up in that for 10 minutes, and then when I went back to finish the fish, they had packed it up.
Yeah, I think
there was still some good meat on that, Jay.
I know. Well, it was also pretty communal too, because like these guys, I think were planning on doing the same thing, and then once they saw we were doing it, they kind of just joined in and ate some of the fish, which is cool. But it was funny because this is also the first time I realized like we did have signal. We had like some phone signal out there, and these guys obviously. Well, I don't know if this is obvious, but they all have phones. And they all took out their phones, and they were all like filming video with their phones, just like you'd see in America.
Yeah, some people like were going live on Facebook.
Yeah, they were like going live.
Yeah, posting it on Snapchat, on Instagram. Yeah, everything. They love social media in Iraq.
They wanted pictures with us. They took a lot of pictures with us. There was like some photographer who was being hosted by them, who was I think he was from the Czech Republic.
Yeah, I don't think he was with them. He pulled up on
somebody else's boat.
Different boat. Yeah, he was like a tourist like us who was there taking
I thought he
photos.
was going to talk to us, but he didn't.
No, I think he was probably like, fuck, I'm not the only white guy here.
But those people were awesome. They were so accommodating, and they were like, hey, you are more than, they said this to us. They were like, you're more than welcome to come to my house. Like, bring your friends and family. Like, anytime you want to come back, you're more than welcome, which was like, for complete strangers that had just met us and stolen their spot.
Yeah.
They were really, really nice.
Middle Eastern hospitality is unmatched. Because they had one dude that everyone looked to, they're like, this is our boy who can sing. And then our host can sing too. So first, that dude sang for a bit, and then our host came out of nowhere kind of trying to like show him up, like, you're not the only one who's got some pipes here.